Welcome to this parashah, Behar on the Mount, this week's study of the Torah portion. The Lord said to Moshe at Mount Sinai, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I am going to give you, the land itself must observe a Sabbath to the Lord." Leviticus 2:5-1-2. Last week in Parashah Emor, God called the Kohen priest to live that expressed a greater measure of holiness. It also described the essential festivals that God calls his feast, which included the Sabbath. This week in Parashah Behar, God gives Moshe the law of the Shemeth, literally release, but commonly translated Shabbateko, year. This law is related to the pattern or rhythm of 7 in Scripture. Here are a few instances. God created the universe in 7 days. There are 7 days in the week. God rested on the 7th day. The temple menorah was 7 branched. The Israelites made 7 circuits around Jericho before the walls fell down. There are 7 modim, or appointed times: Passover, unleavened bread, first fruit, Pentecost, day of blowing trumpets, New Year, day of atonement, and tabernacles. Seven is a number that celebrates the secured purpose of infusing holiness into the whole of creation, Jewish wisdom in the numbers. And while most people are aware of the 7-day cycle of the Shabbat and the holiness it infuses to the week, few realize that God instituted a yearly cycle of 7 for the Holy Land. Just as we are to work for 6 days, but rest on the 7th, the land is to be sworn and harvest for 6 years. In the 7th year, the land is have its Shabbat year of rest, its Shemitah. But in the 7th year, the land is to have a year of Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself, or harvest the grapes of your untended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Leviticus 2:5-4:5. In Israel, even the children keep this commandment in their kindergarten. In the year of Shemitah, it is not usual to see a sign posted next to their weedy, unkept garden that reads, "In honor of the year of Shemitah." Our Gan is not tending our gardens. This is a beautiful sight reminding us of the unequalness of living in the Holy Land. Of course, the law involved more than allowing the land to rest during the Shemitah. The Israelites were to make some agricultural and economic adjustments in order to rest and take the time to learn about the Lord. It was not only a time of physical rest, saving both the land and the people from exhaustion, it was a time of spiritual refreshment. At the end of every 7 years, in the year for canceling debts, during the festival of Tabernacles, Sukkot, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God at the place he will choose, you shall read this law before them in their hearing. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the foreigners residing in your town, so they can listen and learn to fear the Lord your God and follow carefully all the words of the law. Their children who do not know this law must hear it and learn to fear the Lord your God as long as you live in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. Deuteronomy 31:10-13. There was also an element of benevolence or social justice in this holiday, since debts were to be forgiven and the poor could pick the produce that grew without the land being worked. The year of Jubilee, the redemption of the land. Count off 7 Sabbath years, 7 times 7 years, so that the 7 Sabbath years amount to a period of 49 years. Consecrate the 15th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. Leviticus 25:8-10. The 7-year Shemitah cycle accumulated in sets of 7, 49 years, and communicated in the Yovel, the year of Jubilee. Every 50th year, both the land and the people rested. This is very special appointed time of freedom and liberty that is sanctified, set apart, or holy, kadosh, to the Lord. It was proclaimed throughout the land with the blowing of the shofar on the Day of Atonement. With the blast of the shofar, Hebrew slaves were freed and debts were forgiven. And while the land was left uncultivated, as in the Shemitah year, in the Yovel year, hereditary property was returned to its original family, even if it had been sold because the misfortune property or to pay off a debt. In fact, at any given time, the proximity of the Jubilee determined the value of a person's land. If it were just a few years away, the land would sell for less, since it would soon be returned to its rightful owner. In other words, though the land could be sold, it could only be sold for a limited period of time. Although this type of land ownership may seem foreign and impractical, the intent of this law is to combine the truth that the Lord is the real owner of Israel's real estate. Therefore, it cannot be permanently sold. The land must not be sold permanently, because the land is mine, and you reside in my land as foreigners and strangers. Throughout the land that you hold as a possession, you must provide for the redemption of the land. Leviticus 25, 23, and 24. We might liken this concept of land ownership to a lease, with the Jewish people being God's tenants. This law was for everyone, rich and poor alike. It was designed to protect the rights of each person and prevented land and wealth from being accumulated in the hands of a rich few, while the majority remained poor. What's more, this law really brings home the fact that no one, no leader or politician or individual has the right to sell, divide, or give away God's land for any reason, not even for the purpose of a supposed peace deal with those determined to destroy the Jews in Israel. God will execute his judgment on all those who attempt to divide up his land. Joel 3:2. The hope of Jeremiah, the hope of Israel. Houses, fields, and vineyards will again be brought in this land. Jeremiah 32:15. Half Torah, Behar, the corresponding prophetic portion, echoes the theme found in the Torah portion of the purchase and redemption of land. This portion opens with a rather bizarre situation. King Zedekiah has imprisoned Jeremiah in Jerusalem because he had prophesied the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile of the Jewish people. Jerusalem is under siege by the Babylonians, who will soon overtake the land. Nevertheless, the Lord tells Jeremiah that his uncle will ask him to purchase his field, and God instructs Jeremiah to accept the offer. Buy my field in Anathoth, since you have the right of redemption to purchase it. Jeremiah 32:7. This seems like an abused thing to ask of Jeremiah. What? Buy a field that will soon be Babylonian property? ridiculous, especially for a man rotten in jail. But this is no ordinary purchase. It is the prophetic act. Despite Jeremiah's current predictions of Jerusalem destruction, he retains the ability to see hope in the face of desolation. Even though he knows that the city is about to be destroyed and the rest of the land conquered in obedience to the Lord, Jeremiah redeems the land. In doing so, he affirms his faith in the Eternal, who promised the redemption of Israel, that houses and fields would once again be brought in the land. Jeremiah 32:15. Although it is unlikely that Jeremiah will ever live on that land during his lifetime, this prophetic act displays his refusal to give in to hopelessness. He trusts in God's mercy. One day will bring his people back home to the land and to himself. Oh, sovereign Lord, you have made the heavens and the earth by your great power and outstretched arm. Nothing is too hard for you. Jeremiah 32:17. The exiled people of Israel did rebuild Jerusalem and again inhabited Israel, as God promised. However, AD 70 they were scattered by the Romans, though a remnant has always remained in the land. Yet God promised that a second time he would return his people to his land, not from Babylon, but from the four corners of the earth, to never be despaired again. I will bring my people Israel back from exile. They will rebuild the ruined city and live in them. They will plant vineyards and drink their wine. They will make gardens and eat their fruit. I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them. Amos 9:14-15. Our generation is witnessing the fulfillment of the hope in many prophets, the marvelous restoration of the nation of Israel, and the regathering of its people from the four corners of the earth. We hope yet to see the fulfillment of the promise that the Jewish people will turn back to God and be reunited in the Lord under the sovereign rule of the Messiah, sitting on the eternal throne of his father David. Just like in the year of Jubilee, when debts were forgiven and the Hebrew slaves set free, the day is soon coming when all the Israel will recognize that Yeshua Jesus is the Messiah, who forgives us and releases Shemitah, us, from slavery to sin. We know our old self was put to death on the execution stake with him, so that the entire family of our sinful propensities might be destroyed, and we might no longer be enslaved to sin. So now offer your various parts as slaves to righteousness, which leads to being made wholly set apart for God. Romans 6:19. I will cleanse them from all the sin they have committed against me, and will forgive all the sins of rebellion against me. Jeremiah 33:8. Shabbat Shalom.